Audible's best of 2024 picks are here. Discover the year's top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals in all your favorite genres. From memoirs and sci-fi to mysteries and thrillers, Audible's curated list in every category is the best way to hear 2024's best in audio entertainment. Like a stunning new full-cast production of George Orwell's 1984. Heartfelt memoirs like Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's Lovely One. The year's best fiction, like The Women by Kristen Hanna, and Percival Everett's brilliantly subversive James. Audible. There's more to imagine when you listen. Go to audible.com/imagine and discover all the year's best waiting for you.
Did you know that you can make your life-saving donation to Doctors Without Borders go even further? Whether you donate stock, recommend a grant through your donor-advised fund, or make an IRA-qualified charitable distribution, you can take advantage of strong market performance this year to maximize your charitable impact, making it possible for Doctors Without Borders to stay ready to respond in more than 70 countries around the world. Together, we go further. Explore ways to give at doctorswithoutborders.org/podcast.
Forget one-size-fits-all diets. With Noom, you get a personalized weight loss plan that's tailored to your lifestyle. Have cravings? Food FOMO? Noom can help you lose weight while still enjoying your favorite foods. Noom's users love the flexible approach, blending psychology and biology to help you lose weight in a way that's sustainable for you. Plus, you can rest assured Noom's approach is grounded in science. They've published more than 30 peer-reviewed scientific articles describing their methods and effectiveness. Stay focused on what's important to you with Noom's psychology and biology-based approach. Sign up for your trial today at Noom.com.
Episode 10 of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam. Previously on The Messenger, the toll this hospital stay was taking on Rachel. I shared with you that text I had received saying that Rachel was ready to love and be loved, and to be someone's everything. And you heard my plea to Rachel to come on this podcast. I had planned to start this episode with one of the blogs that Rachel had written and shared with me from a Blogspot site, which I talked about on an earlier episode. Given what we know, what you know now about Rachel, that virtually everything she said to me, everything about her life, her career, and her cancer, all that was just one lie on top of another lie. I don't see a reason to give her blogs about what allegedly happened any sort of space in the podcast. She became a content creator of epic proportion, I suppose. I have reason to believe now that this Blogspot site that she created, which you can still find, I believe it's My Hidden Life 821 at Blogspot, that was done for me only. It wasn't part of some healing journey that Rachel found herself on. This group of blogs was made to further Rachel's status as a victim of the worst type of domestic violence. Not just a dozen years ago, but recently as well. It's outrageous what she's accused him of. And while I won't speak about the issues the two of them have in any detail, let's say they were both at times toxic to each other. Rachel, of course, had men in and out of her life constantly, almost from the day after they got married. They're due to have a divorce trial that will happen at some point during the fall of 2024. And this is being recorded in the spring, in June of 2024. It's 4 months away. I wanted to chat with you again about the origins of this podcast and this audio series that I had created for Rachel and I, called Harry Loves Rachel. I was creating that story and that series for a couple of reasons. I wanted for her to have something to listen to while she was stuck in the hospital, for sure. And the other reason I wrote them and how I started writing them is important to the story. You see, Rachel claimed at one point after 6 intensive months of chemo and isolation that Dr. Hightower was concerned about a series of small tumors that had popped up. One in her intestinal tract, one in her throat, and a brain tumor, which caused the most concern for obvious reasons. Rachel was due to start radiation treatment on July 5th, 2022. She was already dealing with chemo at that point. Chemo Wednesday and Saturday. Her radiation would be happening every other day at 4 p.m. Time on the clock is an important detail because of what was really happening in Rachel's life at the time. And I'll get to that. Rachel just so happened to make up a lie about the daily radiation and the time because that time fit right into her work schedule at her new job at the San Luis Obispo County Airport, working for that major American airline corporation. This was all critical to perpetuating her lies about being unavailable. And I will get back to that in a minute. So when she went to her first radiation appointment, she claimed to have a full-on meltdown, a panic attack, an anxiety attack, and as a result, she ended up with an extremely elevated heart rate. And as I've mentioned previously, she did claim to have a heart rate in excess of 200 for most of the first part of the stay. And she claimed several instances where that heart rate was elevated to 300 or over at times. During those events, she was given a variety of different emergency drugs to bring her heart rate down. I have people in my life in the medical profession. My mother was a CRNA, a nurse anesthetist for over 40 years, an ER nurse, and a veteran of a wide variety of medical emergencies, procedures, and surgeries. She's seen it all. She said to me on a number of occasions, "I've never heard about anything like this. How can someone have a heart rate of over 200 for months and be okay? And the heart rate over 300? She said, "Harry, this has me out over my level of knowledge, out over my skis, as they would say. But it doesn't end well. And you need to know that." She said, "You need to be prepared to lose her." Those were painful words coming from my mom. My own doctor, my GP, guy who's actually become one of my closest friends over the years, it became clear to me, at least in his mind, that she was his patient in a way. He wrapped his arms around it, that big brain of his, to the best of his ability to get me information on everything that he could. He went to work on medications and solutions and a litany of problems that Rachel was apparently having. I sent him the first few episodes of this podcast. It was, in my way, a confession, my way to say I have something to share with you. I have something to tell you, and I can't do it by text or in person. I recorded something about it. Keep in mind that this too is a guy who's seen it all. Trauma surgeon, emergency room physician for years. He's had people die right in front of him. Not, fake deaths like Rachel deaths, but real ones. He's also the smartest man I know in regards to the human body. He was often left scratching his head. And after the first 2 episodes of this podcast, he texted me and he said, "I've listened to the first couple of episodes and I'm at a complete loss, believe it or not. I need a fucking break. This is sickening. I'll listen to more when I'm ready." I haven't heard from him in weeks. So anyway, back to these episodes. Harry loves Rachel and where that came from. After that first day of radiation, I asked her what would help her, what we could do to keep her from having panic attacks, anxiety. She said that she could bring her phone with her, but when she got into the radiation room, she'd have to hand it over. But I could help her right before and right after. And she said, "I want to hear your voice. I just need you. That's all." And she said, "You are my reason for fighting, for being here, and for taking this treatment." And that's where those stories came from. I wrote a story on that day, and then I continued to write every single day. I believe that one of the reasons she set up the radiation part of the scam was that the process of moving someone that had been bedridden for months takes time. She had to be transferred from her hospital bed to a bed for transport to radiation and then moved to a table in the radiation room. This entire process would take a couple of hours each day to and from. She'd start to be unhooked from her various machines and monitors and tubes at around 3 o'clock and make her way down to radiation at 4. she took her radiation, she would often feel exhausted and in pain from what she would refer to as the cooker. I've never been through radiation, thankfully, but as I understand it, it's painful and it's awful. And her body was already in near constant pain from chemo. I would ask that she check with me as soon as she got her phone back. And sometimes that wait would be a couple of hours or more. Hear from her at 6 or 7 at night. She'd always need time after radiation to recover, to get cold packs to help her deal with the skin burning or medications for the headaches or body aches, whatever it was. But radiation would take her out of commission from 3 to 8 every day, basically. It would take everything out of her and she could barely open her eyes. At around the same time, they started doing tests on her for various reasons. Those tests would happen a couple days a week, 2 or 3, on non-chemo days. I want to get back to time on the clock, as I alluded to a few moments ago. I'm including the time in this story because at around this time, Rachel did take that job at the airport to work day shift. The first part of that day shift happens from 10 to 1 when they'd be running those medical tests. So she's busy. When you combine that with the second part of her day shift, 2 to 5 or 2 to 6, she had an hour off every day at 1 o'clock. By the way, that just so happens to be the time when I would hear from her every day at 1 o'clock. She just wasn't reaching out to me from the hospital. She was at the airport. So she had this perfect scenario all set in motion to keep me thinking that all of this was happening, and it was always happening consistently. She could keep me thinking that she was hurting and sick from radiation. She could go home to Mark to cook dinner, see her girls, or go to Russ or one of the pilots or co-workers at the airport she was also with, whoever she was flirting with and seeing at the time. We'd connect later in the evening, sometimes around 8, have an hour or two of texting a little bit, and then she would say, I'm getting my medication to go to sleep. Ambien, Lunesta, any number of sleep aids. She'd be off to sleep. Tomorrow would be another day. And that's how it happened every day, essentially for many months to come. The groundwork had been laid perfectly. She framed her scam up perfectly. I told you she was calculated and smart and pathological. Remember what I told you about the narcissist and people with narcissistic personality disorder? They hate to lose more than they love to win. And when they're caught, they're angry. I guess she thinks that me sharing this story is a betrayal of some kind. She's upset that I'm sharing these lies, angry that this vehicle, which has an audience now, is aware of her lies. When I caught on to this and when she was exposed, she was pissed at me. Don't be mad at me. I'm just a messenger. You know how long it took her to say, I'm sorry to me? I want to tell you in the worst fucking way what her first response to me was. I do. But all things to those who wait, all things in time. My promise to you, I will. I will share one thing with you that's at the height of the lunacy, which she actually had the nerve to say, as I questioned her about having all these men in her life, especially Russ, who she repeatedly badmouthed to me. She said, I don't understand why you and Mark are so obsessed with Russ. He's nothing. Nothing ever happened. He's a loser that had a loser job before this one, and now he has this one. He hardly ever works, and he drinks too much. I would never be with someone like that, ever. I got drunk, he got drunk, we shared a kiss and talked and texted, and that was it. I said, you were married to Mark. You told me 12 years ago that you divorced him. So for 12 years, I thought you weren't together and that you rarely, if ever, saw him. That makes sense why I might be upset. I also thought you were in the hospital dying 4 different times. I was told by your fake made-up doctor that turned out to be you, that you were heading for hospice, and that I needed to be ready to say goodbye. You had made up your doctor to tell me how sick you were and how awful it all was. You wrote me a note at one point, a text. I'm going to read it from my phone. And yeah, I'm talking to Rachel as I read this, because I know she's listening. She can't help it. Rachel, you wrote to me and you said, Harry, it's time to let me go. My eyes are heavy. I'm exhausted. And I can barely move. I can't type, I want to die. She sent that message the day after her husband, Mark, caught her at Russ's house. And Rachel, you did the crawl of shame after that while Mark was standing in Russ's driveway. And he waited for you, collecting your clothes and your shoes. This was before I knew I was being scammed. You were sleeping with one guy and telling another one you were dying, and trying to figure out what the hell to tell your husband. Never mind the other guys at the airport you were with at the same time. So that's what we're dealing with here, and that's why we're obsessed. Mark feels cheated on, and rightfully so, and I feel cheated on and beyond manipulated and betrayed. You know what she said? She said, you just want Russ to hate me. I'm rarely at a loss for words. But really, who gives a fuck about Russ? He's as big an idiot as I am. Not only did he fall for your scam, but now he's hearing the truth about you, and he's still harboring you in his home. Small town crime can be horrific. Some of the darkest stories, the most chilling and heinous murders happen where you least expect it. In small towns, these crimes often get overlooked, but not on True Crimecast, where these cases are put in the spotlight. Join hosts Jamie and John every week as they uncover chilling cases from notorious murders that shook the world to small-town mysteries that have flown under the radar until now. Get ready for gripping storytelling, spine-tingling details, and cases you've yet to hear about. True Crimecast, wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by Stoveleg Media.
You know that feeling when your favorite brand really gets you? Deliver that feeling to your customers every time. Memorable moments like these are key to building your business and your brand. Brands like Headley & Bennett use Klaviyo's marketing automation platform to turn their customer data into more personalized connections across AI-powered email, SMS, analytics, and more, making every moment count. Build smarter digital relationships with your customers and make every moment count with Klaviyo. Learn more at klaviyo.com.
In addition to you, the listener, needing to hear the exact words she said to me at the moment she knew she was caught, I have other things you need to hear as well. One of them that I know for sure is that Rachel's daughter, the daughter formerly known as Madison, will be on this podcast, and she will discuss her mom's history of lying and deceiving everyone in her life. Making the discovery that the woman I loved and cherished so deeply, the woman that I trusted as I never trusted anyone before, is just so unimaginable. That finely crafted tale which she concocted was manufactured for the sole purpose of garnering my attention, my heart. This has obviously been a profoundly painful experience for me. It shakes the very foundation of my trust in people, of all people. And it's left me grappling with a mix of emotions, anger and betrayal, and confusion, and so much more. When I first learned of the deception, the initial shock was overwhelming. And what's somewhat interesting is that her lies were exposed to me on December 20th, 2023, literally 2 years to the day that she confirmed her fake pregnancy and the return of the cancer, which never actually existed. To realize that someone I cared for could fabricate such elaborate falsehoods, playing on emotions and exploiting my trust, it felt like the betrayal of the highest order. It wasn't just about the lies themselves, but also about the emotional toll that they took on me, the disbelief and the anguish of being deceived in such a profound way, it's kind of hard to put into words. And I think that I'm going to be ready to discuss what I did when I found out, what I told people around me as an excuse for just leaving her. I'm ready to do that for you, not just for you, but for the people in my life that are following this that I haven't communicated with at this point. Not many people know. People that knew she was sick and knew what they thought was the truth about what she was going through, and what they heard from me, and what they saw with what was going on with me. Navigating the aftermath of this has been a journey. It'll continue to be a journey through this crazy emotional landscape. There were moments of intense anger, directed certainly at her, but the self-loathing which exists in me for having believed in something that turned out to be nothing other than a game, gamesmanship, fuckery, a sick game at a minimum. It was completely intentional and obviously avoidable. There was also a tremendous sense of loss, not just of the relationship itself, but that loss of trust and innocence that had been shattered. I knew her for 22 years when I found out. She's 44 right now. That's half of her life, 2 decades. Coming to terms with the reality that someone that appeared to be the sweetest and kindest person that I thought I had ever known, that she would do this is baffling. What happened to Rachel that she could do this? At this point, no one from her family or her childhood will talk to me. They don't want to know my name. I want to explain something to you that I haven't really talked about before. Before I decided to get serious about making this a series, a real podcast, something that I was willing to, rehash and live out again and do it in a public forum, I wrote Harry loved Rachel, past tense. And I shared it with a handful of people, and I attached it to my SoundCloud, that very same account where I kept all 80 episodes of our love story. Thought it would just end up being our story, our little private story. The same place that I put all the books I read for her favorites, Grapes of Wrath, Catcher in the Rye, Kill a Mockingbird, Where the Crawdads Sing, Of Mice and Men, so many more. Grapes of Wrath on its own took me about 19 hours to read. I read her 150 meditations to assist her in the process of mindfulness, to get her mind out of chemo and radiation and what could be her passing. And I must have learned about 50 country songs for her on my guitar. And up to that point, I never listened to country, ever. She would write to me daily and say the most heartfelt things. Thank you for being here every single day, and for loving me and accepting me at my worst, for standing by my side. Words which motivated me. They drove me to keep showing up every single day. She said, "You are my reason, my only reason to fight through this and to take treatment. It was always you for me, my Harry." She would say that. That was her thing with me. It was always you, my Harry. I went from being this guy that didn't allow himself to be in touch with his emotions to a guy that felt and saw everything. I was present as I had never been in my life. That relationship changed who I allowed myself to be as a man. This healing journey, it's obviously my own. And to some degree, I'm sharing pieces of it with you, and I'll try to do more of that. But what I've learned is that it's a requirement for me. The process of actually processing all of this, trying to do what seems still to be impossible, untangling the web of lies from the truth that I once held dear, and then finding a way to rebuild trust, not only in myself and my heart, but in others. My healing journey is something that I had to embrace. I've had to pull myself up off the ground and learn to live my life again. And that's a test and a task each day. I do have someone that I talk to. I also have a friend from childhood that's a therapist as well. A very smart and talented woman who's been an amazing gift to me. And I made a deal with her. I wanted to deal with the mental health piece of this on the podcast. I think it's important. I do. I don't necessarily feel the necessity to share my journey, really, but I want to share her perspective on what I've been through and what others who have been through something like this have gone through. When I had the first few episodes of this done, I sent them to her and I said, listen, I need to share something with you. I haven't talked to anyone about it. And I'd like to have you come on the podcast and discuss the narcissist. And she said, let me take a listen to it. Let me see what you have. And let me get back to you. I said, fair enough. She wrote back almost immediately after binging the first handful of episodes. She said, Harry, I'd be happy to come on the podcast and discuss the narcissist with you, but I want you to understand something. This is high-level fuckery. I think I shared that with you in an earlier episode as well. She said, what Rachel's done is something which I can't really understand, and I want to hear more. More episodes, more about this journey, including everything that you're probably not going to share with an audience. I'm happy to come and talk to you on the podcast, but I have a condition. I've got this saying where I come from. Generally, it's said when some shit's about to happen. Here the fuck we go. I had no idea what was going to come out of her mouth. And she said a couple things. She said, listen, be careful what you do. Rachel is dangerous. It takes a dangerous person to do what she's done. She acts like she has nothing to lose. And the second thing she said was that she'd be happy to come on if I agreed to seek professional help. This was an easy thing to say yes to. She said, you need trauma and PTSD therapy. I'm convinced of that. So I started on my journey. And I spent time with 2 different therapists. Began to try to find my way through this. It's literally happening right now. For a period of time, after the scam was exposed, I was quite literally one day at a time. My lows were so low, and I had never allowed myself to invest as I had invested in our relationship, as I just told you. Keep in mind that this was compounded by 18 months of feeling like I may get a call at any moment, that Rachel's heart gave out, or that some other catastrophic event had happened. It was a lot. I had to find my way to forgiving myself to deal with the shame and humiliation that I felt. And my therapist friend said to me, you don't deserve to feel shame. You did nothing wrong. Or humiliation. I guess my own sense of integrity, learning to guard myself and my heart, all that just came to the surface. And I guess while the scars from Rachel's betrayal will linger, they're also going to serve as a reminder of resilience, my own, and the importance of honesty and authenticity in a relationship. I learned a lesson. There's a silver lining in this. We'll hear from her promise you that. On the next episode of The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam, I'm just gonna give it to you straight from the heart. And it ain't gonna be pretty.